You're listening to Podium Podcast with former England rugby player Tom May and leading performance coach Simon Hartley. From locker room gossip to fascinating high-performance insights, this is the show that invites some of the biggest names in the world of sport to discuss life on and off the field of play. Podium Podcast is brought to you by True Potential. To find out more, visit www.tpllp.com.
Simon, we're back for the season finale.
I know. We've had some wonderful guests on this season, and today is no exception. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, Chemmy Crawford-Alcott, 3 Winter Olympics, God knows how many medals as British champion, 6 World Championships, and probably just as many massive injuries. Like, I remember seeing her leg break on YouTube once. Wow. There are sports where you can't be completely sane to compete in them. Skiing, motor racing probably, motorcycling for sure, and probably fishing. But Chemmy has probably rinsed about as much as she can out of herself in terms of her levels of performance, and you can't sort of admire her anymore for what she's done, really, can you?
No, absolutely. And amazingly, she's in one piece. That's amazing. But she's actually carrying this forward into the rest of her life now, using all of this to path out a new career.
Yeah, well, let's get cracking. Let's have a chat with her now. Chemmy, it's good to have you finally on the podcast. What's it taken? It must have taken a year.
I know. I mean, listen, I'm quite a shy, introverted person. So for me to build up to chat with you, it's taken a long, long time. Sorry about that. Winters are kind of a write-off for me, but I can't even say that because we're very much into spring.
We're very much into spring. Well, you'd think that, but it was freezing this morning. It's great to have you on the podcast. Our first skier, Simon. We've had all sorts of different sports, but we've got our first skier.
Yeah,
fantastic.
That's great.
So that's
representing.
You're on. Now, I was doing a little bit of revision prior to this. How the hell do you go from Hove to skiing?
This is actually quite a good story. I don't live in Hove, but Wikipedia says I do, and I love that everyone thinks that I do.
Says you were born there.
So, no, I was born in London, and I grew up in Twickenham. My dad moved to Hove, and the Brighton Hove magazines didn't have anyone to write about during like a 10-year hiatus of sport people. So they adopted me, and it was fantastic. So I was like, right, okay, I'll let you be my home from home. But I love Hove. I'm actually going there tomorrow because I've accidentally signed up for an e-foil flight race, the first one ever in the UK. And I need to go and train on some open water. So I'm going down to Hove tomorrow. So I do try and get down there. I love it down there. And my dad's moved up the coast, away from the coast of Sussex, but it's such a lovely area.
So even still, there's not many slopes around.
Sandown Park. There is an 8-second dry ski slope with a massive dog leg on your right footer that I used to frequent maybe 6 times a week as a kid. Lied to join the club. I was 7 years old, told them I was 9. I was pretty macho when I was younger. I did a lot of lying about my age in my youth sporting career. And actually, ironically, I can't do right-footed turns. I spent my whole life at Sandown doing right-footed turns, and my left-footed turns are much better. But no, I grew up in Twickenham. The backstory is my dad was a rugby player, played for London, Richmond, and my mum was a swimmer. They loved skiing, weren't allowed to do it, got into it when they retired, and my eldest brother was naturally talented. He was spotted by the French ski school. So he started racing before I was even born. I thought the guy was a legend when I was 18 months old, and I was like, I want to do what he's doing. So I started skiing at 18 months old. I always say I got my dad's glutes and my mum's lungs, and then I'm made to be this like mountain goat. And they are decent glutes. They're still there. I retired 10 years ago, and I still knock coffee pots off the tables when I walk past in cafes. I'm like, sorry, that's the glutes.
Love it. So with regards to that progression through into life as a professional skier, that must be quite difficult because it's not on your doorstep. Does it mean do you have to move away? How does that work?
Yeah, your family, financially, emotionally, and very much the rest of the team have to sacrifice their needs if you have a talent to ski and you grow up in England. I'm going to tell about the second time I lied about my age. So there was this program that had teenagers from the UK, took them down to New Zealand. So our summers down there for the winters for 2 months, and really like honed in on their talents. And I saw it at Sandown Park. It was one of those pre-internet pull off the sheet with a telephone number on. And I went home, climbed on my kitchen counter, got the phone and called them and said, look, I need to be on that program. Had this like 45-minute phone call with this Scottish coach, and he was like, yeah, they're great. Are your parents keen? I'm like, well, they're not here right now, but when they get home tonight, I'll tell them about it and we'll work on it. And there is one slight catch in this. I'm not a teenager, I'm 10. And the guy's like, what? I've just had a 45-minute phone call with this super determined, passionate little 10-year-old trying to escape her parents for 2 months and go to the other side of the world. Anyway, parents got home and my mum said, okay, listen, this is a big sacrifice for the whole family, very expensive. And I said, no, you guys don't need to come. I can go solo. So I went down to New Zealand on my own for 2 months when I was 10. No mobiles, one telephone card. I used to walk down at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday to the phone box, call my parents. And I just had the time of my life. And I remember crying on the way home because I didn't want to come home. And that's when I realized that I was kind of different. Like I meet 10-year-olds now who don't know what they want to have for breakfast, but I knew I was so fierce that I wanted to fulfill everything to do with being the best ski racer that I could be, that I was willing to go everywhere alone. And then I went to school in America for 2 months of the year. So I grew up in this region, but November, December, I'd go to America to school. In the summers, I'd go down to New Zealand. And, I had the most incredible life. I won the World Children's Olympics at 11. I remember the British anthem playing, going, this is what I want to do. This is what I want everything to be about.
That's amazing. I've worked with a couple of Winter Olympians and snow sport athletes, and one of the things I noticed is that they are incredibly independent. Whereas other athletes sometimes kind of just fall into a squad and they get all of the coaching and all the rest of it, and they become quite reliant on that environment. You can't, doing what you do, you can't become reliant on the environment. You have to create all of that yourself.
Yeah, but that's quite fun, isn't it? There wasn't a pathway to follow. I was a Londoner who wanted to be a ski racer, so in terms of sponsorship, it was quite challenging when I was younger because I wasn't relatable at all. No one had done what I had done. So even though I won the Children's Olympics and got 2 medals in the European Youth Olympics, it was like, well, we don't know if you can make it. We don't know if you're worth backing. So it takes a huge amount of confidence. And actually, I was very lucky that I was the era of being a young female athlete who was allowed to be quite aggressive behind their dreams. Nowadays, this is terrible, but and something that really needs to change. But it's not a attractive quality for young girls to be as determined as I was. They lose friendships. They're deemed arrogant. Whereas young boys, if they say, hey, I want to play for Chelsea, I want to play for Tottenham, it's like, great, good on you, big goals. Whereas girls, it's, people pat them on the back and say, okay, let's be realistic. I hear this all the time, and I'm like, why be realistic? Why not aim for the stars, shoot for big things? Because even if you don't get there, you're going to push your boundaries. And I was very much supported in being that person. And I had a great friendship group who knew that I was different, but it was a very positive different.
We hope you don't mind us interrupting the show with a very short message about our partners at the Podium Podcast, True Potential. True Potential provide wealth management that's simple, effective and unique. Their expert advice, innovative investments, leading technology and dedicated support are all designed to help you do more with your money. Visit www.tpllp.com now to find out more. Capital at risk. True Potential Wealth Management and True Potential Investments are authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Thanks for listening. Now, let's get you back to this week's show.
Is professional skiing, is that, once you realised that you had the talent, you had the skill to get there, is it almost a guaranteed, or does it rely on that sponsorship to make sure that you can still fulfil your dream? Is that
Yeah, I mean, I want to say it's not elitist, but I was very lucky when I was younger that my family had the financial backing to pay for all of this stuff. And I got a scholarship to my secondary school. And so instead of the money going to a private education, that went into my skiing that my brothers had. So we tried to make it quite fair. But yeah, it's extortionately expensive. And yeah, you need the talent. But without the financial backing and the program to travel, then you won't be able to fulfill your true potential. It's something that we've always wanted to change. And nowadays we have got UK snow domes, and that's why freestyle in the UK is doing better, because that's something that they can practice. Like, you can't practice being a downhill ski racer skiing 90 miles an hour at Hemel Hempstead Snow Dome, but they do have rail nights, and they build amazing jumps and features that you can go and practice. So we've done well with improving that side of our grassroots to profession. But unfortunately, to compete with the best in the world, you've got to be able to travel. Like, I went down to the Southern Hemisphere 18 summers, whether that was New Zealand, Chile, Argentina, and it costs a huge amount. And, I was very, very lucky that I was pretty savvy when I was younger. I got an agent at 13. I used how I looked and how they marketed me, and put that money into my skiing to drive having a personal program. And then, it got to the stage where UK Sport decided they wouldn't fund me. I was 8th in the world. And even though they were only giving me an additional third of my program costs, that gave me the bit between my teeth to go out there and sit in meetings and tell people that I wanted to be the best and I wanted to win. And actually, all those skills that you wouldn't want, Simon, you want to be in a program that is fully supported when you're that good in the world. But actually, my retirement skills that I have now and my belief I have in myself has come from at 14 years old having to go into meetings and get people to back me. And I wouldn't have chosen that. And if you'd said, okay, here's a pathway, I would have chosen that. But actually, you've got to look at the positives, and that is a massive one.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I was reflecting with some business leaders the other week about how I've seen athletes, some of whom have had the path smoothed for them, and some of them who have had to negotiate the bumps in the road. And actually, those who have negotiated the bumps in the road probably were the better athletes, but also have done better after their sport, after retirement.
I mean, you read any athlete autobiography and everyone's had adversity. And actually, it was something, I was obsessed with this when I was younger. And until the age of about 20, I had success handed to me on a plate. I had talent, I had financial backing, but I didn't have the freedom to be my best because I had a fear of failure. So those are actually intertwined, because I knew that I had everything laid in front of me to win races. I was blocked. I couldn't perform 100%. I couldn't be free. And it's something that I fought for my 8 healthiest years of my life. I couldn't ski 100%. I skied 80%. I kept 20% in my back pocket to self-validate why I wasn't winning. And I had Sir Clive Woodward and all these incredible coaches investing in me, but I couldn't be free. The bigger my coaching team got because of my talent, the more I contained my performances, because I couldn't be free because I was letting everyone down. And actually, I got to a place where I had this one run. It was an incredible day in 2008 in Solden, and it's the World Cup opener. It's on this crazy, gnarly, steep, icy pitch in October, and it's the first World Cup of the season. Women and men race the same track, and it's brutal. And I had a really bad first run. I came 31st, and you don't qualify unless you're top 30. And I remember my coach, my physio, my technician coming down, and we were driving away. Huge disappointment, like silence in the car. I took on these emotions of these 3 grown men with my performance, and I realized that I'd let everyone down. And my coach's phone rang, and I was back in the race. Someone had been disqualified. You turned up the mountain. I inspected the race from the lift going above it, which is incredibly unprofessional. But then I stood in that start gate, and for the first time, I was free, because I had no expectations. I had no pressure, because nothing good could happen from this run. Of course it couldn't. I didn't even know where I was going. And that was the run I actually made history. I became the first female British ski racer, or first any gender ski racer to ever win a run in a World Cup. And I remember being elated. And then my coaches coming down, and they were just chilled because they knew I had it in me. Whereas I needed that crazy, untechnically great run to just fly. And from that moment on, my career looks actually quite disastrous, because I started crashing and I started getting hurt and all the injuries came. But it meant that every time I pushed out that start gate, I was going 100%. I was being the best that I could be, as opposed to withholding my potential.
There's some races that I watch, like the Han and Calm yearly, which is the most mind-boggling thing I've ever seen. You've got to be an absolute lunatic to do things like that. And you mention your health. Now, you may have some more listed. Dislocated jaw, broken back, broken ribs, torn groins, 2 ACL reconstructions, a compound fracture of your tibia and fibula, and you've broken your ankle.
And my neck, Tom, my neck.
Your neck. When you
Yeah, my neck is fused together. You can actually see it. I don't know if you can. Obviously, we're doing a podcast, so this isn't very exciting. But can you see my bump I've got here?
Okay.
That's my neck fused together.
Wow. So you only forgot your neck, Tom?
Well, yeah, that was because it was early on in life. I just thought.
Actually, Tom, you bounced back. Like I was 11, broke my neck, and within 10 months or something, I was back skiing because you heal so quickly. And all I remember from my neck break is I got very popular at school because every day I used to be able to nominate someone who could stay inside at lunch to hang out with me, and people used to bribe me with cakes and doing my homework. It was like crap. I was like, this is mega.
I mean, athletes have to deal with some injuries, and I was incredibly lucky not to. Really, I've got some dodgy fingers, but my God, that is a list that anyone would shiver at. How do you manage to deal with that? Because they're not sort of out for a week. They are long-term injuries. How do you mentally get through that?
But I only got those injuries every time I chose to go 100%. So every scar I have, every surgery is a highlight of a time where I chose to be my best. And there's such a fine line between success and disaster. You know, whether I win the race or I'm lying on the ground in pain, immense pain, and a helicopter's landing to take me away for 2 years out of the sport I love. But I've gone all out. Like I've chosen to risk it all, and that's an immensely satisfying way to live.
So is that something that you? I mean, in that message, so all of those incredibly successful moments that you've had, are you just under?
Yeah.
Flat out.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Right.
When I worked with Formula One races before, and actually on bikes as well, motorbike races, they will often talk about navigating on a knife edge, and that if they go slightly too far, they're going to crash, and if they don't get close enough to that knife edge, they're going to finish 4th, 5th, 9th, whatever. And it's really difficult to understand where that knife edge is. Does that mirror your experience?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think you have to be a bit of a Fruit Loop with some screws loose to get to that point, because and also be incredibly selfish. Like my existence as an athlete was really selfish. Like I was willing to push myself to the point where I might have to have people stop their life to take care of me for a few months, time and time again, to the extent that, you know, my family at the end, there was an intervention where they said, you've had enough. You've gone to 3 Olympics. You've done a good job. This is enough. And I said, no, I can do one more. I can get back. I might not win. In fact, I can't win with all this metalwork in my leg, but I can go there and show people that sport is inspiring to be your best, whether you win or not. And I did. I went to my last Olympics. And then I remember that I had such a good time and I skied so well. I came 18th, but I was super close to having a great result. But I raced the World Cup afterwards and I crashed, and I went to see my surgeon. And I said to him, hey, you got to sort my leg out. It's feeling funny. I need to get on a plane to Sweden. My next World Cup's up there. And he said, listen, I patched up your leg 6 months before the last Olympics. So I broke my leg 3 times in that last 4-year Olympic cycle. And I had a horrendous surgery the last time. And he said, I patched it up because I saw what it meant to you to make the last Olympics. But just to say, if you break your leg at speeds of 70, 80 miles an hour now, there is nothing that I can do. And I would have to amputate your leg from the knee down. And he's like, are you willing to risk the rest of your life in this sport that you obviously love for mediocre results? Like, the guy was brutal on me, but I really needed that. I was like, you're right. Okay. And my family could have harped on about it till the sun, went down. But actually having someone in that profession lay it out so black and white, it was, I needed that, because I would have kept going because I love the sport so much.
Yeah. And actually your view of risk tends to be different than other people's. I can remember chatting to a guy, I don't know whether you've ever met him, a guy called Alan Hinks, who was a mountaineer. And he's climbed all of the 14 8,000 meter peaks on Earth. And he told me about a time where he was he was in front of a piece of ice, and he knew that there was a chance that it could avalanche. And he looked at it initially and said, okay, what's the chance? Probably 50-50. Then he dug the little sort of snow pit that you dig to find out what the layers were like. And he said, okay, it's only a 10% chance of death here. I'll cross it. And I said to him, you did what? And he said, let me put this into context. He said, so we met at a little place called Scotch Corner near Darlington. He said, if I got on a train at Darlington to go to King's Cross and you tell me it's a 10% chance of death, I'm not going anywhere near it. But he said, this was my life. This is what I live for. This was, if I didn't do this, it's like you might as well kill me anyway.
I was I had to think like that when I came back from my leg break, because so a year and a half I couldn't walk for. I got an opportunity to do dancing on ice. Torvill and Dean basically saw me, and I was a broken person, but I was convinced I could get back to skiing. But I had no money at the time, and I couldn't afford physio. And they were like, right, come on dancing on ice. We've got the world's best physio. You can have free physio twice a day. You can learn to skate on a blade this week, this big. It'll help you. When you come back, your profile will increase. You'll get sponsorship, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And that went really well for me. I made the tour. I was really aggressive. I needed to make the tour because you don't make much money on the TV show, but you make money on the tour. So I was like, if I get the tour, I can afford to, go back to the next Olympics. And I did all that. And I was like, right, okay, I'm ready to return. I'm going to ski. I'm going to do my return race at Lake Louise, which is where I crashed 2 years to the day before. And had this horrendous leg break, and everyone was like, why do you want to return there? Go somewhere else. You can have another week's training. And I wanted, like, there's a sadistic part of you as an athlete that wants to see what you're made of. Like, can I handle this? If I can jump back and do this race and do that jump again, and I've landed that jump, Simon, 86 times. Just once was absolutely terrible. So I'm like, right, that's pretty good odds. Like, I've got this. But I remember getting to the first day where you're on the hill and you get to inspect before running the training run downhill. And they actually gave me ketamine when my bones broke outside my ski boots because they wanted me to have memory loss. They thought I would go into shock, and I was lying there. So I don't remember my crash. And I have it on my desktop, and I'd never watched it because I knew I was going to come back for Lake Louise. And the team were really nervous that when I got into the environment and as I was inspecting, so skiing slowly towards that jump, it would all come flooding back and I'd just crumble. So I just skied straight past it in inspection. I literally was like, wow, I've done that before. And they're all watching me, all the teams waiting to show me the directions, tell me what to do. And I just skied straight past them. And they're just thinking, oh my God, this is just going to be a nightmare. And then that was my first race back, and I qualified for the next Olympics and made World Cup points in it. So you've got to trust your instincts. And we never do that because there's a pathway of what works and what we should be doing. And actually, when you get into that competitive zone where you're going to go on your limit, you just got to trust your gut. And it could have been disastrous, like not having a look at that jump. I hadn't skied for 2 years and I'm just going blind, but I had visualized it. I can tell you for 2 years, I'd visualized going off that jump and landing it. So, I mean, that could have, I risked quite a lot that day and it paid off.
Simon, and I mean this in all huge amount of respect, Chemmy, that there are some sports where you just aren't quite right I think listening to what Chemmy's talking about there, and from a bloke that's played against some pretty sizable human beings that would want to do some pretty nasty things to me. Like I would rather do that every day of the week than just go through anywhere near what Chemmy's just talked about. That motorcyclists are another. Look about the Isle of Man TT. It's ridiculous. But there's an element of knowing your stuff, right? Chemmy clearly knows exactly how to ski. Those guys know exactly how to ride a motorbike. You know what you're doing. Actually, that level of risk comes down. What from your experience, Simon, in dealing with those types of athletes, where is that point of understanding that they're pushing too far? Do they know that limit, and what is it about those characters that allow them to almost at times push past it?
One of the things that it's actually one of my speaking agents years ago reminded me. She said the word eccentric means off center, and every world-class performer that I've ever come across is not normal. They're not normal people. If they were normal, they'd achieve normal things. but they're not normal. They're exceptional. They're eccentric. They're part of the 1%, not the 99%. So you've got to accept that and embrace the fact that they're not normal. They probably need to embrace the fact that they're not normal as well, not try and be normal, because they're not going to make normal choices. They're not going to take on risks that most people would take on. They'll take on extreme risks. But equally, I think, as Chemmy was talking about earlier, and what I learned from Alan Hinks, the risk they understand, but they also understand that not doing this thing has its own risk. The risk that actually you're not living the life that you're not doing what you want to do, and you're living a shadow of a life. So actually, there's actually a risk to not doing it as well. And that balance, I think, as long as there's an informed choice in there, that you are choosing to do this, positively choosing to do this, even though you know what it comes with. And Alan said to me, he knew that there's a very good chance he could get killed up in the mountains. Lots of people are. And he knew that he was going to be making his daughter, not an orphan, because, mum was still around, but depriving his daughter of a dad. He knew that was part of it. And he knew it was incredibly selfish as well. But to not do it was not to live, if you know what I mean.
But also that there is the thing that when you're talented and you have a skill at something, you're taking risk, it's not as crazy as when you retire and that is still part of your personality. So this is the issue now, is that I'm a yes person. Any opportunities that arise, like people always say to me, oh, Chemmy, why are you always lifting weights now? You've retired. It's like, well, I want my body to be ready to say yes to any challenges that might come my way. And so that is more of a risk that I'm taking now, because I say yes to things where I have no skill, because I have got that, right, I can do this, it's high risk, but I haven't built up years and years of skill behind it. So these are stupid decisions. Whereas the risk management I had as an athlete when I'd spent years honing the skill actually are lesser. And actually it's hard because I can't change my personality, Simon. Like that's who I am. I actually thought when I became a mum, everyone always says, oh, because you've got all this other responsibility in life, you lose that craziness. And I haven't. And I still say yes to things that I know are going to hurt me and push my limits, but I don't have the talent behind it. So now it's just about trying to manage where that risk line is.
Yeah, but like you say, to not do that would not be authentic. You wouldn't be being yourself. This is who you are. So yeah.
Some of those mental skills, Chemmy, and we'll come on to this whole idea of transitioning out of sport now. The resilience you must have gone through, that you have demonstrated to come back from those injuries time and time again. The strength of mind to go back down a slope that's battered you. What are the skills that you learnt? Well, firstly, what are the skills that you need to get to the top of that skiing world? And then what are the ones that you've managed to take with you that are now helping you in your life after sport?
Well, I think the easiest answer to your first question is passion. I didn't get into skiing because I thought I was good or I could make a living out of it. I really love to ski. And that's how you can overcome any adversity, because the grass isn't greener. You take away what I love doing and all I want to do is go back to it. You tell me I can't do it and I want to prove you wrong. So the passion is how I've got through all of the injuries, how I've been able to make daily sacrifices in my life and not live a normal childhood, because I know that I love to do skiing. And that's why I've retired and why I'm so lucky to work on Ski Sunday, because I'm still driven by that passion. It's still so much part of my life. But in order to go through everything, I always say you've got 3 Ps, and it's passion, positivity, and perseverance. You're going to have to persevere, because the limit, you have to be able to push your limit. You have to find that growth mindset to chuck all thought process and all sensibility out the window and just live in the moment and find that freedom. And that's what took me a long time to find. And then with that, you've got to be able to look at the positive in the situation, whatever the situation is. When I got injured and had those 2 years away and I got the opportunity to do dancing on ice, I was like, right, I'm a really crap skier on the flats. Like, I'm a bull in the china shop. I can throw myself down the steep. I'm competitive, but I cannot ski on the flats. It's boring for me. And actually, when I had that time off, I was like, right, I'm going to learn how to have proprioception in my feet. And that's what dancing on ice did for me as well. And I came back from that and I didn't have the same strength on the steeps as before, but I was way faster on the flat. So if that's something that I could have consciously done early in my career, then I could have balanced out that talent and got a lot further. So you've got to find the positive in every situation, and that's really, really hard. And actually, sometimes you have to cheat your way there. When I was coming back from injuries, I was never me. I use this imposter syndrome as a very much a positive mindset. So I looked over and I saw Lindsey Vonn. She is the greatest downhill female ski racer of all time. She also had a huge amount of gnarly crashes. She was coming back from injuries all the time, and she would win every comeback race because she just didn't overthink things. So when I got up on race day after my injuries, I wasn't Chemmy. I channeled Lindsey, how she talked, how she walked, how she warmed up, everything about her. So by being her, but having the positive experience in myself, then I could slowly stop pretending to be someone else and start being me and believing in me, because as experience then came positive to myself. So that's kind of how I got through it, and I still do that now when I'm in a situation where I'm nervous, which I think is really good. So many people don't even let themselves get nervous because they're like, well, I don't want to do that. That's scary. That's great. That's why you should do it, because otherwise you're not building on who you are or progressing your personality. But you've got to get comfortable in that fear zone. And I get comfortable by using inspiration on other people and putting my head in how they feel and then getting the outcome as myself.
What have you found? I mean, strikes me that you haven't found a huge amount difficult about transition, but there must have been times, because athletes are pretty good at hiding it, where you found it pretty difficult.
I think motherhood has been the most challenging thing that I've faced. Retirement, I was pretty lucky to be quite aggressive with, right, okay, physically I need these endorphins and this dopamine, so I'm going to sign up to every challenge the year I retired. So I'm going to do everything. I did this world's toughest ski race across the Arctic, which is 3 marathons in 3 days on cross-country skis that I'd never done before. So I kept pushing myself because I knew that's what I needed. And then I got, the door, my way into Ski Sunday, and I was like, right, this is where I want to go. And then motherhood came, and I had to stop being selfish. Like, I'm so used to, what do I need physically, mentally? And it's like, right, motherhood, that goes all out the window. I can't control anything. I wanted to control everything. Although I'm a downhill skier, so I'm quite a controlling person, which don't often fit together. And then you become a mother and you're like, Jesus, how am I going to keep this tiny little thing alive? And I went back to work after 2 weeks because I was so scared that having my foot in the door of Ski Sunday, I would lose it by being a mum. I was like, no, I can do this. And I skied 2 weeks after giving birth. Like, I asked so much of myself physically, and I had no clue what I was doing with this. And I'm very lucky that they turned out okay.
The fact that you become, as you described it, sort of comfortable in your discomfort zone, comfortable in the fear zone, it becomes normal to you, means that when you encounter another one, you're kind of used to it. But I think there's another element to this, and that's that you also realize that you can take on stuff you've never done before. You develop that belief that you can take on anything because you've been outside of your comfort zone so often. You know that it hasn't killed you. It's probably helped you. It's probably helped you grow. So when the next one comes along, you kind of embrace it. And when I see athletes transitioning and they do it well, it's just another discomfort zone, which is somewhere that they're quite used to be. The interesting thing, though, is that the real discomfort zones, I think you're right, can be almost disguised because they're not physically uncomfortable, but like loss of control, that's a massive discomfort zone for people, but it's not physically uncomfortable. It doesn't require us to, it doesn't require our muscles to work harder or for us to, push our body any further, but it actually challenges us in a really different way. I think parenthood's a massive challenge to most people, honestly. One of the biggest ones that we face.
Yeah, being right in the middle of that right now, oh my God. For the third time, you just thought, you think you get better at it, but I'm not sure.
I mean, 3 is just crazy. I wanted 3. I'm one of 3, so I wanted 3. And then 2, and we're just surviving. We're like, I really struggle on social media because everyone's like, oh, yeah, how do you do what you do? It's crazy. You've got your life so well together with the kids. And I'm like, oh, I'm that swan. I am just surviving. Like, I'm just floating. My legs are going crazy. And I'm like, I must be more honest with all the shit times that I have and the times that, I take 50 shots and I show my boys my boobs behind the camera to make them smile because they're always smiling. So everyone thinks that they always have to smile. And I'm like, all the stuff that I do, to get that shot. And I'm like, that's not real. I must be more honest.
Tom was talking about taking on stupid risks because there's him having a third kid. There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, we had a 6-year break in between each one. It's just like, just as you get your life back, it's like, oh, let's go and grenade it. It's pretty difficult. I think that's what I'm struggling with most is that, being
Tom,
quite.
you've got free childcare. Your 12-year-old must want to take care of a baby. I mean,
Yeah,
nailed it.
So from someone that wants to be a big man, he suddenly becomes like an 8-year-old again. It's like, I cannot leave this child, a dead child in my hand. But yeah, I think that's what I struggle with, and I've said it to I had to voice it with my wife because I was just like, look, my routine, my structure has gone out the window. And I can't control this thing when it's crying, and oh my god, and all that control and effort that you can.
But then, in the depths of those really dark moments, you can also come out feeling really empowered. I remember I went back to work after 2 weeks. I was at World Champs in Ore, and I was interviewing the guy who just won the downhill. This big ego guy. He was world champion, and I was interviewing him. And I think I did the best interview of my life. And afterwards, the cameraman turned to me. He's like, "You nailed that! Like, you're just so good." And I was like, "I've also made half a litre of milk whilst I was doing that interview." And I had these silent breast pumps, and I had like 5 layers on. It's ski clothes. I can do this. And I was interviewing him, knowing that I was also providing for my 2-week-old son at the same time. I'm like, "Oh yes,
I've
got it."
Right
and
now.
he didn't know. This guy never knew, and I was like, "Yeah, I won that one."
It was, yeah. I mean, maybe that's a story I shouldn't go down for on this podcast. But yeah, I've got some little stories about that with my wife when she was in hospital. And I never thought it was skills I never thought I had.
What, breast pumping?
Yeah, basically, right. I became the best milker ever. It was. And her mum walked in, and I was just like, "Oh my, this is so weird."
You've got to do anything. You've got to do what you can do.
I was doing it for the cause. It was nothing else in there. It was, it was a strange moment. But there we digress. It's been brilliant to chat to you. I've got 4 questions. We always finish with the same 4. So if you hadn't been a skier, what other vocation took your interest? Where do you think you would have ended up?
I would have had to have been an athlete of some sort. I used to love tennis. I used to play quite high-level tennis. I don't think I would have made it as a tennis player. I was a bit too sensitive, and I always want everyone to like me as a people pleaser. And tennis is a battle. It's a direct battle. So when I used to do quite high-level competitions as a kid, and you'd pass at the net and that girl would say something nasty to me, I'd completely crumble. So I chose a career that is so dangerous that all of your peers are facing those same crazy situations, that you have these amazing friendships. So, but I would have been an athlete. I would have had to have done something quite physical.
Is there any of that in skiing? Is there any sort of bad mouthing?
Once I got it once, and it was when I came back from my big injury. And one of the best skiers in the world, who I was not challenging, said to me, "God, the jump's dangerous today. You must be scared." And I was like, "Oh, I know where you're going with that." That's the one time I got it. And I don't know if it was just a stupid comment, because I don't believe people are nasty. But no, I mean, my wedding was full of girls that I raced against. It's an amazing vibe.
Yeah, brilliant. Very different to other sports, especially rugby. Who do you most admire most in sport and in business?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm a bit of a feminist. And my mum passed away when I was 21, and that was the first kind of adversity that I faced. But she did a degree in women's liberation, and I'm one of those women who goes into a room and finds the most successful woman I can see and wants to be their best friend. I'm very good at. A lot of women feel jealous and intimidated by people of talent of their own gender, but I'm like, right, you empower me. So I mean, there's so many women in my life and other people I don't know. I've just recently befriended, I don't know if I should say her name because I'll tell a story about her, but she's a neuroscientist, and she speaks on positivity and dopamine, how it floods the brain. And I want her to be my best friend, because every time I hear her speak, she opens up a new pathway in my brain for me to be better. And I think those are the kind of inspirational figures that you want, people who will push you out your comfort zone, people who say no to you as well.
A hard thing to do. You've got some funds to invest. What are you going to invest it in?
I mean, this is super cheesy, but our mountains are dying. Like it's obvious it's happening. The sport I love is not going to be around in 50 years. It's already changing. The mountains are changing shape, and I think it's really sad that we can't support the mountains to heal. And we saw them heal in the pandemic, so we know that it doesn't take a huge amount. And that's what I would invest everything in, because obviously that is a natural ecosystem that will support global warming and the future, all of our futures.
Yeah,
that's one. And
I listen to quite a lot of podcasts in it, and for £2 million you can get these pipes that you put up to the solar system that emit gases that will protect our ecosystem and our mountains. And I'm like, that is just so cheap. So I would go that way.
I mean, I haven't got £2 million knocking around on my sofa.
Is that not what you're giving me, Tom?
It sounds pretty cheap, that.
I know, it's so cheap. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll find £2 million. We'll get going on it. You can watch one film for the rest of your life. What's it going to be?
Point Break, the original.
That was quick.
I love it. I love the cheesiness, the sport, the surf, the limit. So surfing is something that I love because it really scares me, because you have to have the choice to push yourself into big waves. And if you don't, you get eaten.
You do this surfing on the back of on the back of a boat, don't you? Like a.
I used to wake surf, but now, because I'm trying to go more electric in my life, now I do e-foiling. So the race I'm doing on Saturday is this e-foiling, like 40 kilometers an hour, a meter above the surface of the water. Kind of superhero, makes you feel pretty cool. Although I'm now currently wearing a blue wetsuit, so I look like a flying blueberry going down the Thames. So I'm not sure I'm very cool doing it.
Guy doing that in Walton the other day, Walton on Thames.
Yeah.
And it came off. Oh my God.
So yes, I did have my first injury about 2 weeks ago, and I got hit. I was down in Hove, and I got hit under the water by the surfboard, 30 kilometers an hour on my quad, and I had a dead leg in the middle of the sea, and it was pretty scary. I had this crazy bruise. I had to go through rehab again, Tom. I mean, I'm like, I don't need to rehab, but had that electrotherapy on my leg for months.
Oh wow. Well, yeah. Well, hopefully your race at the weekend goes better than that one.
Yeah.
But
I've learned how to fall, so I'll be fine now.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, it's been brilliant to have you.
Thanks, guys.
Podcast finally got you on, and look, all the best with the race at the weekend.
Worth the wait, yeah, Tom. Worth the wait.
Then worth the wait.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
You're listening to Podium Podcast with former England rugby player Tom May and leading performance coach Simon Hartley. From locker room gossip to fascinating high-performance insights, this is the show that invites some of the biggest names in the world of sport to discuss life on and off the field of play. Podium Podcast is brought to you by True Potential. To find out more, visit www.tpllp.com.